So, as some of you may know, we always have these talk titles in advance so we can promote them and share what's coming down the pipe. And as I was looking at my calendar and realizing I needed to get my promo materials in, I looked at it and I was like, oh, it's fall, it's autumn. And I love the colors. Don't get me wrong. Colors are beautiful. And I'm really blessed. My parents live high up in a balcony overlooking it in an apartment overlooking a conservation area. And so the colors this time of year are absolutely magnificent. And you just see the cycle of life going through there. But on the other hand, I looked at my calendar. I don't have kids, okay? Understand that. I do not have that whole school thing. But all the activities I have in fall, I think our Jewish friends have it right that now is the time of the new year. And then, of course, it starts getting darker a bit earlier. And of course, eventually we'll switch back to standard time and it will get darker even earlier. And part of me just wants to hibernate. Part of me just wants to get into that space of just cocooning myself over the winter and, restoring my stores for spring, summer, and fall of next year. And it's healthy to want to do that, but it's also important to, continue participating, continuing to do the things outside of ourselves, to be part of the larger community, to feed ourselves, whether it's going someplace for pickleball or swimming or yoga or whatever. Things are relaxing a bit around COVID, and I am hopeful and trusting that we will continue to be able to gather and to do things outside our homes. Watching some videos that I made over 2 years ago when we went into the first lockdown, and just seeing how things have changed over the last 2 years. So with all of that feeling of overwhelm, and my natural state is I'm a high introvert. My natural state is to go into my cocoon, close the door, and just, shut everybody out. Not the best choice for my mental health. So how do I get myself out of that space? Well, before I get into this too much, I really need to give a shout out to one of the LUTs. And forgive me, I have forgotten her name. I was one of the evaluators during her final exams. And she presented her talk on Zeal. And after she concluded and we'd given her feedback, I said, I want your permission to steal something from you because you captured Zeal so well that I had never thought of it in this way before. So this is my take on it. I've taken it a little different direction than she had, but it was just such an aha moment for me. And you have to understand, I've been an LUT now, a licensed UT teacher for 22 years. So I've seen a lot of things. I've read a lot of things. And for her to come up with something amazing that I was like, okay, I need to take that. Please share it with me. So thank you, whoever you were. I love you and I bless you. And I hope you see how you've inspired me. So thanks to our wonderful webmaster, Bob. The booklet that I have adapted this talk from is available on our website for download. It's a PDF file, and it gives you all 12 powers, which is one of Unity's core teachings. So in each of these chapters on the 12 powers, as you might have guessed, our power this month is Zeal. There are 7 steps. Now, I don't want you to think of them as, okay, I'm doing this. It's more like a cha-cha. You might take a step forward, you might take a step back. I find I'm usually in the 3 to 5 zone. I'm not quite there yet. Some days I have really good remembrance of my spiritual powers, and other days they're just gone. And you know what? That's okay, because this is a learning experience. This is an opportunity to experience that balance of the human and the spiritual, as I've said before, and will continue saying until I find a better analogy, of the two sides of ourselves rolling on the edge like a coin. And as we go through life. So some things about the 12 powers. They were developed by our co-founder, Charles Fillmore. Myrtle wasn't quite as keen on them, and that's okay. It really, for me, gives me permission to say, you know what? I don't have to accept everything. I accept what I can, and I might accept more later, or I might find something doesn't work anymore. However, let's see what Charles had to say. So Zeal or enthusiasm, a lot of people like to use the word enthusiasm instead, because zeal, you get into zealots and zealous. And let's face it, there's some very zealous people around right now, and that's fine. Blessings on their journey, not mine. What I find really interesting is it stems from back here in your medulla oblongata at the base of the brain. That's how I know for myself if I'm being stubborn. I get a really specific pain right back here. Charles also aligned them with the 12 disciples, because that was his idea, was that you could take all of these spiritual principles that he developed as individuals, rather than trying to eat the whole elephant at once, to break it down into the smaller groups. So Simon the Canaanite was the zealot in the group of 12. And this is our opportunity to kind of do this dance of, how do I find that balance of being excited, being enthusiastic, without going too far? Let's face it, that's something that I've found many Unity people get a little, it's a dance we're a little uncomfortable with, because we're not big evangelizers. And we like to share the message. And finding that balance has been an interesting discovery for myself. So let's go through our steps. And as I said before, they're not necessarily linear. They kind of cyclical. As a Doctor Who fan, I'd say it was timey-wimey, wibbly-wobbly. And if you don't know what that means, Google it. But what I loved was the LUT candidate in her talk, she talked about a booster rocket. So she used a Saturn 7 rocket. I'm going to take it a little differently, because I got thinking about the space shuttles. And this is Atlantis, or sorry, this is Discovery. It's not one of the ones that blew up. But I thought, yeah, we can find a parallel in the journey of a space shuttle. So our first awareness is dissatisfaction. So this is a point where we're urged to do something better. And here you can see the space shuttle and its cargo and its modules are clearly still on Earth. They are clearly still in an area where it cannot be launched. There's too much stuff around it that would catch fire. It's not in a clear zone. So that's the point at which, when you start feeling like you need to do something else, that you need to take some steps, that you are feeling like there's a change needed in your life, that's when your zeal can, it's kind of going, hello, I'm here, willing to help you. Just, you just got to remember you have me, and we'll work along. Our second step is a desire. So that's, as we learn, it moves from, I'm not happy where I am, where do I want to be, to, yeah, that's feeling like a good change. Yeah, that's feeling like what I want to be, or where I want to be, or what I want to be doing, or how I want to be expressing in this world. And here we can see it's, getting ready to be on the launch pad and getting ready for launch. So we move into a space where that zeal it still might be hidden a bit. And I love that the main rocket is orange in this picture. It's so symbolic to me. It's an aspect of, we're not in space yet, but we're getting closer. We're getting clearer about what the next steps are. So the next steps will be, is the cargo loaded? Are the astronauts loaded? Is it a clear day? Have all the boxes been ticked on the checklist of making sure we have a safe launch and recovery? So this is where the desire starts. So that's where you start to feel that urge to go and do things, that urge to, maybe I need to investigate that town or that city that I've been wanting to live in because it has something that I'm desirous of. Or maybe it's time to brush off your resume and look for something new. So the third step is dedication. And so Simon the Canaanite, he is known as one who hears and obeys. And so we can take in to this time that opportunity to say, okay, this is what I want in the outer, and take it into the inner and dedicate ourselves to that vision, to that idea, to that goal, to that aim, to that intention, however you want to phrase it. but that it doesn't have to be, explosive in an all-encompassing way. Like we saw the winds of Hurricane Ian this week. As you can see, the flames of the rocket are very controlled. They're very straight almost behind the plane. And this is kind of like Zeal, that it's not about putting your energy all over the place, but rather to focus it, not confine it, but just to focus it on whatever it is you want, aligning yourself with your other powers, the faith that things will turn out as you have imaged them or better, the strength to get through the challenging parts, whether it's saying goodbye and letting go of something that has been part of your life, or being willing to make a huge step forward that feels really scary, but you know that it's your next best step. So there are the other 11 powers to support you in this. And it becomes a practice. The last time I spoke about how we could have different spiritual practices, and that everything can be a spiritual practice when the intention is there, when the focus is there. And so it may be that it feels like you're struggling. But if you look carefully at this picture, it is not the space shuttle that's providing the oomph to get out of Earth's gravity. It is the rocket. And I invite you to think of that kind of like how our spiritual faculties are. At one point, they feel like they're separate from us. Or at least sometimes mine do. Sometimes I have a moment where I forget. And other times it feels so much a part of us. So it is so much a part of us that it gets us where we want to go. It's that part of us that we can rely on in our spiritual self, knowing that our human self may not be ready. Our human self may be saying, what the fluff are you doing? And yet our spiritual self will provide that oomph, that boost, that energy, that enthusiasm to get to where we want to be. So I've been trying to imagine what it's like to be an astronaut in one of these and just have all those G forces and not be upright, perhaps, I think they may even have a suit that prevents the blood from going to an anti-G suit, I think it's called. But to be in that angle, that looks so uncomfortable to me. And yet, that's what needs to happen to get this ship into its orbit. Now, notice, we're not doing it alone. We have wisdom and love. We have, and those can be your booster rockets. Wisdom and love are needed in pretty well everything, because if you don't love what you're doing, why do it? But love will attach itself to everything without consideration, because love only knows how to love. It needs that tempering wisdom to ensure that we are loving what is correct for us. It may not be correct for someone else, but it is part of our path. And wisdom is that part of us that makes us say yes or no, yay or nay. Is this mine to do? Is this best for me? Is this my next right and perfect step? The awakening power of zeal is the flame that burns but does not destroy. It begins to generate the energy you need to accomplish the things you need to do. At this point in our space shuttle example, the purpose of those rockets is to get it out of Earth's gravity, enough that it is in space, outside of our ozone layer and the troposphere. So what's the eventual journey, though? The purpose is not to just take it to there. We've done that before. We've done that again. It's to get it up into an orbit so that the astronauts can do experiments, so that they can learn things, so they can answer questions, so that one of the things I love when we have broadcasts are, can you play a guitar in space? How do you wash your hands in space? How do you brush your teeth in space? What does space smell like? The questions that we have. And I love that kids are engaged in this, because kids often don't think about, well, societal norms or the what you can't do. Their mind is infinite. But getting back to our story, the goal here is to get the shuttle into space so that it can do its orbits, or so it can connect to the space station, or whatever its goal is. And it needs that extra oomph of zeal, of the power of those engines to get it there. Quickening. So this awakens not only new energies of the mind and soul, but also of the physical body. You have a new sense of being wide awake, energized, renewed, on fire with spiritual purpose and determination. And this is when you're realizing that, yeah, this feels right. You know, the questioning and the challenges start to slow down, in my experience, at least, that things are just affirming left, right, and center that this is where you're supposed to be. And just as a sidebar, I picked this picture not because it's a great shot of, you know, the bay doors are open and they're clearly doing something, but because we're above the Tigris and Euphrates River, which is so important to Western culture and human history entirety. So this is, you know, the past and the present, and to some extent the future in one photo. But this is the point where you kind of relax a little bit on the human side, in my experience, that you say, yeah, this is feeling right. I had one of those moments this week where I had been working on something, and it's now looking like it's coming into fruition. Not till next year, so spoilers for later. Now, genius. You might say, what the heck? Why is genius? Well, genius actually comes from the Latin word meaning guardian and deity, and designates the person who is so in tune with spirit within that he or she continually displays exceptional powers. So we have the power of this space shuttle. It's come, you know, it's gone out with the benefit of the other boosters, but to come back, it does it itself, because it's moved to the point where the energy of those booster rockets are no longer needed, because there is enough zeal, there's enough energy, enough potential energy, to use the physics term, in that to bring it back to Earth safely. And there's some extra. We have a parachute, because we have that point where everything just kind of flows. At this level, though, you still kind of have to think about it a little bit. You're still kind of aware. It's not fully yours, but it's so close. And it's that opportunity to see how this enthusiasm can express in your life. And finally, the last level is energy. And the complete development of your God-given potential of zeal results in a continuous, unfailing supply of energy. This is the result of perfect spiritual unification with the source. So if you may recall, when the space shuttles came back, they'd come back into Texas, and then they would be flown back to Florida on this jumbo jet. And to me, that really is an example that the spiritual part is still there. We're just not as aware of it. We know it's going to be there when we need it. We don't have to think about it. We don't have to think about how do we get the space shuttle back, because it's already in place. And for us, our zeal and all the other 11 faculties, the 12 in total, we get to a point, I am not there yet. So I'm sort of making some suppositions here, but you don't have to think about it. It just happens, because it is such a part of you that it just overflows out of you, rather than you having to think about, how do I get enthusiasm? How do I get enthusiastic about this? It is, regardless of what's happening. And this is in the booklet, as you'll see if you download it. This is where we get into the example of Jesus the Christ, or Jesus Christ, however you want to say it. The idea that the Christ in that word, the anointed one, translated from the Greek, is that part of us that I said in our opening prayer, that is eternal, divine, and spiritual and universal, that each of us has that aspect of us within, And it's up to us to choose how much or how little we express to the rest of the world and to acknowledge within ourselves. Sometimes it can be scary to acknowledge that spiritual side of ourselves. Sometimes we don't want to. And that's okay. It's a journey. It's an opportunity to share. It's an opportunity to be who you came here to be. And many days I don't have a clue what that looks like. And then something will happen, or I'll read something, or I'll see something on YouTube or on the news or in a book. And I'll say, yes, that's what I need to be. That's where I need to be. That's what I need to be doing in this world. I know I've said it before. I'll say it again. If you had told me 5 years ago when I quit my permanent job that I would be doing what I have been doing for the last 3 or 4 years, I would have told you were crazy. I really would have. The doing what I am doing now wasn't even on my radar. I hadn't even got the imagination of, or the image of, the possibility that there would be this platform called Zoom, that I would be teaching with people across Canada and into the States, and now potentially speaking with people in Europe. I mean, it blows my mind some days what kind of time we're living in and what opportunities are coming. And yeah, I get enthusiastic. I get zealous about what I do now. I love what I do. People have said, so are you going to find a job? I'm like, why? Financially, I'm fine. Financially, I am prosperous. And I am loving what I am doing. And it's giving me great passion. And it truly feels like this is what I came here to be and to do. And I am trusting for you that you will find that as well, if you haven't already. And if you have found it, let's do a happy dance that you found it, you know it, and you can express it. Speaking of our co-founder, as I was earlier, in his last year of life, Charles handwrote this: I fairly sizzle with zeal and enthusiasm and spring forth with a mighty faith to do things that ought to be done by me. He was in his 90s at that point. I joke that some days I can't say this whole thing, but that is one of my goals, is that I am so filled with enthusiasm for what I am doing, even if it's just cleaning the house or doing the dishes or watering the plants, that I can bring an enthusiasm to what I am doing. I can bring a joy to what I am doing. I can emanate to people that I am enjoying what I am doing. I'm enthusiastic about what I am doing, and that it is possible to be enthusiastic about doing dishes. That's another talk. But let us take that with us forward. And now it's time for our meditation. And I'm just going to give myself a little wiggle and take a sip of tea. And I invite you to just get comfortable wherever you are, however you are. If it means standing on your head, please do so. If it means closing your eyes, that's great too. I will have some images on the screen if you want to have your eyes open so you can see those. But you don't have to, because we'll talk about them as well. And let's just move into our affirmation for the month. I enthusiastically accept my good and go forward to achieve my purpose. And breathing, let us just take these words into our hearts and minds. Into our hearts so we feel them, into our minds so that we can have the thoughts around them, have the intellectual awareness of our purpose, of what is ours to do. And in this moment, I acknowledge that my purpose in this exact moment is to hold the high watch, to hold sacred space for this planet and all on it. It has been a challenging week. There have been so many undesirable and challenging items. Escalation of war, hurricanes, destruction. And yet, we can be the beacons for those who are in chaos or conflict. And just breathing into that space within yourself, where you feel that connection, where you know your own divinity, where you know that connection of the oneness that we are, where you can mentally embrace everyone. Where you can say with all certainty, I behold the Christ in you. I see the divine in you, even if it doesn't seem expressed to my eyes. I affirm with and for you your prosperity, your health, your well-being, your safety, your ability to rebuild and re-engage, your capacity to heal physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. And in the well of my being, I send forth all the love that is overflowing out of me. It may seem like some are more difficult to love than others. And we acknowledge that that is the human experience. But we reach out in the spiritual, in that aspect of each one of us that is eternal, that is divine, knowing this universal truth for all. And we bring into our hearts those for whom we have a specific prayer request. We hold them in light and love, affirming for and with everyone prosperity, healing, wholeness, safety, and inspiration for the next best step. And let us take all of these prayer requests, all of these considerations into the silence. And we take together our monthly affirmation, holding it for the world. I enthusiastically accept my good and go forward to achieve my purpose. And now let us move into the affirmations for the month of October. For inner peace, I pause, I breathe, I enter a sanctuary of peace. For faith, by faith and real within every circumstance. For wholeness, centered in divine life, I flourish in every way. For prosperity, I am one with and now realize divine abundance. And for world peace, I am at peace with all of humanity.